Hey everyone, welcome back to FPBcast. Gerry, Ahern, Mike Szvetitz with you here, FrontPageBets.com. Week 2 of the NFL is in the books. Week 3 of college football as well. As we look ahead to moving into the end of September, and we start to know a little bit more about these teams, Gerry. And in the NFL, it was a crazy weekend, a historic weekend in the NFL. You had 3 teams come back from 13-point or more deficits in the fourth quarter. That's only happened one other time in the NFL. For the first time ever in the NFL, 2 teams on the same day rallied back from 20-point second-half deficits. That were the Cardinals and the Dolphins, and then also the Jets beating the Browns. They were down 13 in the last 2 minutes and came back and won, which was crazy. So we'll get to that.
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Joe Flacco, Mr. Game Manager, out there making it happen. I mean, we'll get to those in a second. Also, college football, top 10 starting to, kind of separate themselves. Obviously, Georgia, huge win. They're rolling. South Carolina, it's Georgia and everybody else to me. Talk about that, set that up, look ahead to week 4 in college football. And this week now you start to see some college rivalry games. You start to see some interconference games going. A lot of top 25 matchups that we want to take a look at. But Gerry, what was your impression? Kind of let's look back, college or pro, from the week that was. What really stood out to you?
Well, I think from a college perspective, obviously Georgia is just far and above the top team in the country, and they continue to prove it. And the bettors are on it hard too. I think it's 11% now of the bets nationally to win the national championship are behind the dogs to repeat. And then you got Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, USC, and maybe Clemson fighting for those other 3 playoff spots in my mind's eye. Michigan really hasn't played anybody. Ohio State played Notre Dame, which looks like a pretender.
Yeah.
SC kind of same thing, hasn't really played anyone too tough other than Stanford, and Clemson, similarly. So there's some work to be done. I think, for me, big thing was Texas A&M finding a quarterback in the LSU transfer, getting by Miami.
Yeah.
I thought that was a big takeaway from last week. And then 2 Big Ten sort of winners and losers. Penn State going to your old stopping grounds in Auburn, picking up a big win there. And then from my old stopping grounds, the Michigan State Spartans pulling into Washington and getting boat raced by the Huskies.
Yeah.
$10 million for Coach Tuck. It gets him 1-1 apparently, and out of the top 25.
Yeah, not a good day for our 2 old beats there. I mean, good gracious. Auburn, losing that bad at home. It was the first time they'd ever hosted a Big Ten team in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and it wasn't even close. I mean, Penn State's good. Now, don't get me wrong. Clifford, what? How long has that guy, their quarterback, been in? I mean, he's like an 8th-year senior or something like that.
Been there a while.
He's been there forever. Still goes in there. They had a great game plan. Auburn looks lost. It's already starting. I'm already starting to hear some of the rumblings from the plains, and firing the coach, getting. It's one of those things in the SEC, especially at places like Auburn, where you're only as good as your last game, and it doesn't matter what you do or if you win a national championship, they're going to run you 2 years later if you're not living up to expectations with all that money. So, and plus, being a little brother to Alabama, not looking good down there on the plains. Penn State does look pretty good, but again, in the Big Ten, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan. Everybody else is kind of jockeying for a position. Ohio State, other than Notre Dame, like you mentioned, we thought Notre Dame was going to be really good. They're not. And now we've got Ohio State. Are they as good, or, have they just not played anybody yet? Michigan looking good early, but like you said, there's still a lot out there to be determined. I tell you, I think Georgia is like, they're so good on both sides of the ball. And Stetson Bennett, is just really, not just a game manager. Last year, he was, he's this, undersized. He's not very good. I mean, that kid can make plays. You go to South Carolina, which, South Carolina's not very good. It's still a tough place to play. Williams-Brice Stadium is a tough place to play. You go in there and it's not even close. And I think it's Georgia and everybody else. Alabama's got to figure out some identity. They had an easy cake game last weekend. As they get through that SEC West, though, it's going to be harder and harder for Alabama if they don't start making, playing like Alabama does.
I'll give you a sort of a long shot bet for the Heisman. Bowers, tight end from Georgia. If he's not the best player in the country, I don't know who is. Probably won't win it, but you could throw your money away in other ways, more irresponsibly, like, for example, follow your NFL picks.
Yeah, no, yeah, man. Wow, Jared, it's too soon, bud. Yeah, don't. If you want to burn some money, just go ahead and pick exactly what I picked. Good gracious. Let's finish up. I do like Brock Bowers, though. Kid started as a true freshman last year, led all the tight ends, was an All-American. I mean, man amongst boys out there at 19 years old. I mean, he's really, really good. Let's finish up with college, though. This week, 3 games that I'm watching, actually 4 games that I'm watching real quick. Clemson at Wake. You got number 5 at 21. You got Sam Hartman's back playing for Wake Forest at home. I don't know how much of an advantage playing at Wake Forest at home is, but they're there. You got number 20 Florida at Tennessee. Tennessee's 10.5-point favorites. The Vols, they were my pick to upset Alabama, to be the one team to beat Alabama later on this year. Hendon Hooker at quarterback, Josh Heupel kind of getting that offense going a little bit. They've got Florida at home, and then Arkansas at Texas A&M. And Texas A&M, Arkansas is number 10. Texas A&M at home, where they lost to App State, they're 2.5-point favorites over the Razorbacks on Saturday. And then speaking of App State, they host JMU in a Sun Belt clash. JMU's pretty good. They lead the league in a lot of offensive categories. App State's 7.5-point favorites at home against JMU, a little Sun Belt action. Jerry, what are you looking at in college this weekend?
Well, I'm big on Florida, Tennessee. I think that's the game that's going to show how for real the Vols are playing at home, big favorites. In the past couple of years, when they've found themselves in such an auspicious position, they've generally not done so well. I think they'll be okay at Neyland. I think there'll be a lot of Rocky Top sun and some corn squeezings going down. Arkansas A&M, I think you mentioned as well, is another biggie. I like A&M. I think they really sort of set themselves up pretty nicely last weekend to correct the debacle, which was App State, which was really some inability to execute it all offensively. I like them at home as the favorite. App State, do they run out of magic finally? I mean, that was probably the worst Hail Mary throw I think I've ever seen in my life.
Didn't make it to the end zone.
I mean, that looked like a backyard play, but can't take the win away from them. They're still counting that $1.5 million from A&M too. So
yeah,
good times in Boone, North Carolina.
Yeah, I tell you what, that 7.5 is a lot against JMU. JMU can score; they're pretty good. We covered them a lot in Richmond when they were, in the CAA. And I tell you what, they've got some offensive power, but to go to Boone with the role that App State's been on, like that 7.5 seems like a lot, but I'm not putting anything past Appalachia State right now. I mean,
I wouldn't. I mean, they didn't play their best game against Troy, and I think they were a little caught up in game day hype and all that stuff. Yeah. But I think App will be fine. And then, I like Clemson to take care of business as well.
Yeah, Clemson at Wake. I like Wake Forest. They're gritty. They take the kind of the personality of the quarterback and their coach. But Clemson, we'll see again though. Clemson on the road, are they for real? They haven't really played anybody. You've got some, their quarterback situation is still kind of up in the air. I don't think there's they say DJ is the starter. I don't know if he really is, because you bring that freshman in. He's played some. He's already burned his red shirt. It looks like they're going to burn his red shirt. So I don't know if Dabo is really convinced that he's got the guy under center yet. We'll see at Wake. And I think, that Florida-Tennessee game, though, too, like I really like Richardson at quarterback at Florida.
He's stunk the last 2 weeks, though.
He has. And that's what's crazy. The kid's an athlete. I don't know. Again, I like the way he spins the ball. I like the way he plays. He's got good athleticism, but I mean, you got to have the guys around you, and you can't lay an egg when you play, at home against Kentucky. You can't. And
Kentucky's good though, to be fair. I mean, Kentucky's a legit, top 15 team.
Yeah, Mark Stoops has got them rolling up there in Lexington, and I think they're a team that as they start to build and get a little more. They're playing in the SEC though, and that's the hardest thing to do, is to crack through. If you're going to break through in the SEC, the East is probably the division to do it in, because you have a lot of just there's really never been, other than Georgia the last couple of years, that somebody's really taken command. It kind of rotates. We know in the West, it's Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Auburn. You've got some of those teams that kind of eat each other up. In the East, it's who's got the most talent. They kind of run away with it. So if you're going to break through in the SEC, Kentucky's got a chance to do that in the East. But again, they got to contend with Georgia, which I think is, going to be really tough to do. Let's switch gears to the NFL. Historic week last week. We talked about it at the Open. I think for watching these games, not only, do I have a vested interest in the picks and what we do, but, it's been entertaining. It hasn't always worked out the way I've wanted it to, but it's been entertaining the first 2 weeks. You had some crazy finishes in week one, and then how do you give up 13 points to the Jets at home in the last 2 minutes? If you're the Browns,
how does Tua Tagovailoa throw 6 touchdown passes and look like Dan Marino? I mean,
he looks more like Boomer Esiason out there, left hand. Again, how do you and he's got some talent around now. Tua's got some talent, and Tyreek Hill and Waddle, those guys. I mean, they both had more than 200 yards and 2 touches each.
Right.
When you've got Tua throwing for almost 500 yards, what is going on? And not only that, I mean, the Ravens defense is supposed to be good. The Ravens are they go up big and then they can't close. I'm still, my mind is, the Browns franchise is already a dumpster fire right now with everything going on. And now you lose to the Jets and Joe Flacco at home. It's not a good look.
How about that Raiders-Cardinals game? I mean, the only person who apparently hit Kyler Murray all day was the fan in the stands afterwards. I mean, that was amazing, right? Yeah. He's just running around like playground ball, making plays.
And that's what
he throws that 2-pointer in the tightest window I've ever seen in my life.
That's great. And he's directing traffic. He's telling the guy where to go, and he throws a great ball. And that's the thing about Kyler Murray. It's like this kind of almost like Tua. They look terrible. They can't make a pass. And then all of a sudden they can make a play that you're like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And
I'm sure it's from all the game film that he's been studying during the week.
It's in his contract. You got to make sure you hit that. Wait, so you got some crazy games going on in the NFL. My picks just, light them on fire. I feel like it's my March Madness bracket every Sunday. Just burn it, after the first set of games. But we're gonna keep rebounding. We're gonna keep chopping wood. We're gonna keep swinging all the coach cliches. We're gonna keep pounding that rock. This week you've got, I think my game of the week this week, you wrote about it earlier when we went with the early lines there on FrontPageBets.com. The Green Bay Packers at Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Not the game we might have thought it would have been a week or two ago. Tampa Bay's got some banged up receivers, Julio Jones, Godwin. They're both questionable for the game. Mike Evans is suspended now after going after Lattimore in the Saints game. And those two definitely don't like each other. But you can't do that. That was just stupid.
I like Brady acting like he wanted to fight, but he didn't.
Yeah, who's he going to fight? Who's he going to fight? So you've got a 45-year-old quarterback in Tom Brady, no offensive line, banged up receivers, and they're still winning. But I think the Pack gets the better of them this week at Raymond James down there in Tampa.
Well, they certainly looked a lot better Sunday night against the Bears, although it's the Bears, and they kind of let the Bears back in the game.
Yeah,
it's a rivalry game, so those games are generally close. But he found some receivers he could trust a little bit. Obviously, they're pounding the ball, 2-pronged running attack, which has been quite successful.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like Green Bay a little bit going down to Tampa, but mainly because of the things you pointed out with the offensive line being so thin.
Yeah.
Brady is the greatest quarterback in the history of the game. There's no real disputing that, but he doesn't have a lot of supporting cast this year around him.
No. And then when one of those guys is banged up and Fournette hasn't been running the ball well, again, their offensive line, you score what? It takes you to the fourth quarter almost to score a touchdown against New Orleans in a game that I thought was going to be an actual shootout. They just don't have. I mean, they're going to grind out some games because of Brady, because of I really like their game plan and who they have. We'll see what Byron Leftwich, their offensive coordinator, kind of coming up with some scheme there to get Brady out a little bit, because I tell you what, if he just stands back there and gets hit, it could be, 45 could turn into 65 real fast, after an NFL season like that. And I think there's a jet taking off outside my office right now. They're about to land something here in downtown Richmond.
Got another big one too, though, coming off of the Bills massacre of the Titans last night. Them and the upstart Dolphins and Tua. I think that's the other real biggie to look at. And
right.
I don't see anybody touching Buffalo, including the Fish, but that'll be a fun one to watch.
We got two undefeated teams in the AFC with that East, and so you're looking for the Bills to just keep rolling. I mean, they looked great last night against the Titans. They had a great game plan for Derrick Henry, and then Tannehill. I don't know. Malik Willis comes in. Former Liberty quarterback comes in at the end there. I don't know how much of that was just, getting them some reps, but you've got.
I think it was mainly just to not get Tannehill hurt, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, they were just crucifying him.
They were hitting him pretty hard. I like that. But, you speaking of games there, I thought Minnesota dropped the ball against Philly. Now, Philly is, Jalen Hurts is playing well. Don't get me wrong, but Kirk Cousins looked like the Kirk Cousins that can show up last night. And I think with all the weapons that they've got, they need to get going. You've got Minnesota goes to Detroit. What about the Lions? Lions are playing pretty well. They're believing. The weapons on offense and the way they got some swagger now. Talk about the Lions for a little bit, Gerry. I mean, you covered.
Well, I mean, Jared Goff, I think, is a much more confident quarterback this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown as a receiver is proven to be a brilliant pick, sort of late round pick a year ago. I had a big year last year, has been huge thus far this year. And DeAndre Swift running the ball gives them, a legit running back for the first time since a fellow named Barry Sanders, maybe. Defensively, they've got some guys making some plays too. I love my man, Malcolm Rodrigo from Hard Knocks fame. Kid's just a hitter. Fun team to watch. My father-in-law is either going to have a heart attack or finally have a happy run to the playoffs. But I get a lot of Lions texts when I'm watching games elsewhere. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Speaking of whatever texts and what's going on with Cincinnati? They can't protect Joe Burrow whatsoever. He's gotten sacked 100 times in the last, 10 games or whatever it is. I mean, the guy, you can't make plays on your back. And they just, Cincinnati has just been really struggling. Now they go to the Jets, who have actually, got a little bit of momentum. If the Bengals start 0-3, losing to the Jets, it's a one-hit wonder for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they overachieved a little bit last year. I mean, they certainly do have some weapons in Chase and Mixon and company, as well as obviously Joey B. But man, you got to protect your quarterback. And the kid got hurt last year. He's going to get hurt again, especially the way he sort of freelances coming out of the pocket. And they look like they're in trouble. They look like they're in trouble in Pittsburgh. They look like they're in trouble last week.
Yep.
And if they look like they're in trouble against the Jets, that's trouble in River City.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about both of those, their two losses for the Bengals, though, they look terrible and yet still chances to win the game. And that's
I mean, in a nutshell, that's the NFL, right? I mean, you talked about those huge comebacks last week, a lot of close games. We didn't even talk about the Dallas Cowboys playing without Dak Prescott, getting it done with Cooper Rush, who looks like the ultimate game manager. And they've got they got a good field goal kicker. I mean, a lot of close games in this league, and that's why betting on the NFL is a process that takes a lot of expertise and a lot of thought, because the intangibles that go into like making one play or converting one first down late is the difference between winning and losing week to week.
I don't know if you've heard this, Gerry, but football's a game of inches.
It is a game of inches. Defense wins championships.
You can use that, though. You can write that one down. It's pretty good. All right. Speaking of pretty good, I think this is a pretty good FPB cast. Gerry, thanks for joining us. As always, every Tuesday we'll come at you here on FrontPageBets.com. Stick with us. I promise we're going to get back on the pick bandwagon here. We're gonna turn it around.
Hey, maybe you stink, but I was 3-1 on my best bets.
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that.
Like, a little trouble against the spot. It was 11-10 last week, which is at least in the black.
Yeah.
But we're coming back hard this week.
Let's go. I need to get back to 500. We're hovering around that 500 area, which isn't, again, after the first 2 weeks of the NFL, anything can happen. We're going to settle in a little bit. So keep it here at Front Page Bets. We got it all for you. Thanks for watching.